Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Captain Renee Fernandez with the Gulfport Fire Department. I want to start off by thanking everybody for being here. As we all know, that hurricane season is upon us and the time to prepare is now. We are very lucky this evening to have two special guests here. They're going to provide us some great information on being ready for the hurricane season. I want to first introduce Rodney Wynn, meteorologist from the National Weather Service, and Bobby Deskins, chief meteorologist with Channel 10 Tampa Bay. So at this time, they're going to take over and pass on some very valuable information for all of us.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. I'm going to go through some operational services that the National Weather Service provides. Again, my name is Rodney Wynn. I am one of 17 meteorologists located at the National Weather Service office in Ruskin, Florida, right across the bay. I'm going to kind of cover our area of responsibility, and Mr. Bobby Deskins is here, so we're going to kind of tag team some stuff later on, and then we'll open it up for some questions and answers after we're complete. All right, so this is our office. We're located in Ruskin, as I mentioned. We have 6 forecast offices that covers the state of Florida: Tallahassee, Tampa, Key West, Miami, Melbourne, and Jacksonville. We're open 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. We never close. Let's see. So this is our forecast area all the way from Levy County up to the north, down to Lee County south. We cover out to 60 nautical miles over the Gulf waters, and Polk County and Highlands County inland. Okay, so this is a slide just showing some of the billion-dollar disasters. That's with a B, billion. As you can see along the Gulf Coast there, we had 4 hurricanes or tropical storms that impacted anywhere from Texas to the Panhandle of Florida. Okay, wireless emergency alerts. Most of us get these on our phone. I did a talk earlier this week, and most people said they get these wireless emergency alerts for any warnings that go out. It's free. Most of the cell phones are automatically enrolled in this. You have to opt out not to get this. And it's connected to the tower wherever you're at. So it's not just your home address, it's wherever you're located at. And so you'll get any severe weather warnings that we put out, hurricane warnings when we're affected by a hurricane in this area. Okay, other ways to get information, commercial apps. Unfortunately, the National Weather Service, we work for the government, so we do not have our own commercial app. But you can go to mobile.weather.gov on your phone and pull in any kind of weather and alerts through that. The FEMA app in the App Store, that does have a weather feature to it, so you can pull the latest warnings through that app. And then the NOAA Weather Radio, of course, you can tune it to your county that you're in, and it's going to alert you of any weather warnings for that specific area. And alertflorida.com. Okay, as the captain mentioned, hurricane season is upon us. The first day is next Wednesday, and it runs from June 1st all the way through November 30th for the Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean. Okay, so this is the official NOAA, National Hurricane Center, outlook for the 2022 season. We're expecting, once again, above average tropical cyclone development. Expecting 14 to 21 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 6 major hurricanes. So I like to put this out. A lot of people like to see these numbers, but I like to tell people, don't look at the projections so much. It only takes one storm to drastically impact an area. So make sure you prepare early. Okay, and here are the names that we're going to go through from A to W. And unlike previous years where we have run out, I think in 2020 we were all the way in the Greek alphabet. They're no longer using the Greek alphabet because it confused people with alpha, beta, zeta.
Yeah.
It was just very confusing. So now they have an alternate list that they're going to go to. Hopefully we don't have to go to the alternate list, but if they do, then we do have that. All right, so this is kind of a graph of the pilot or the timeline. We start out relatively flat and slow through June, all the way through August, and then we start to ramp up really quick. Peaking out at January 10th is the highest chance of tropical cyclone development. And then we slowly decline through October into November and ending in November 30th. So fortunately this year we didn't have, and we're not expected to in the next week to have any tropical cyclone development. I think I just jinxed this.
Yeah, come on.
Shouldn't have said it, but yeah, so it goes until November 30th, but we still can get tropical cyclone development before June 1st and beyond June 30th as well. Okay, so this is a graphic just showing the chaotic tracks. This is all of the 21 named storms that we had last year. 13 of them were tropical storms, 3 hurricanes, 4 major hurricanes, meaning category 3 or higher, and 1 subtropical storm. The highest damage assessed was Hurricane Ida that made landfall in Louisiana. I believe it was $75 billion of damage. All right, so when we hear people talking about hurricanes, whether it be from the National Hurricane Center or our office or the media, a lot of us talk about what category it is. The category is based off of the winds. But however, 9 out of 10 U.S. tropical cyclone fatalities are due to water. Now the winds do a lot of damage, but the water is the highest threat associated with tropical cyclone. Okay, so I just got a few pictures and videos here. This is Hurricane Ike in Bolivar Peninsula in Texas. This is just southeast of Houston. This is the barrier islands, just like we have just to the west of here. And this is all due to storm surge pushing in. Okay, this is Bayshore Boulevard back in 2012 with Tropical Storm Debbie. This was a tropical storm that was way north of here. And that onshore flow, so it doesn't have to be a direct hit. We could have a storm, a few hundred miles off the coast and still see some impacts. Okay, we all remember Hurricane Irma. That's the strongest storm we've had in the past, 5 years or so. It made landfall near Marco Island over southwest Florida and then moved up the spine of Florida. But we did see quite a few impacts with tornadoes, torrential rainfall in excess of 20 inches in a lot of area, and a lot of flooding even on the east coast of Florida. So these pictures were taken Tampa Bay. I'm sure you remember this, where we had strong east-northeast winds and it blew the water out of the bay. And this was the track of Hurricane Irma. And that video on the right there, that's of the storm surge up in Jacksonville. So you can see the track is over 100 miles away from Jacksonville, but it still saw drastic impacts. So if there's one thing I can pass to you guys, don't look for it to be a direct hit. It could be 100 or 200 miles away and still have drastic impacts to the local area. Okay, this is 2016 Hurricane Hermine. Another significant storm that made landfall over the Panhandle. We had tornado outbreaks with this one as well, and a lot of onshore flooding, coastal flooding associated with this storm as well. This was a video, I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of dark. This was taken up in Cedar Key in a flood-prone area with onshore flows. Yes, it is. Yes, that's one of our most coastal flood-warned places that we have up there. A lot of low-lying areas. So this was taken in 2020 with Hurricane Laura. I'm sure we all heard about this one in the news. Very disastrous hurricane as it made landfall. This is all due to storm surge and flooding rain. Okay, 2021 Hurricane Ida, as I mentioned, this was a $75 billion hurricane damage storm. And Hurricane Michael, okay? This is the strongest storm, I believe, since Katrina. So it was just devastating for the Panhandle. Cat 5 winds in excess of 160 miles per hour, 19-foot storm surge. Basically everything in its way was just, the trees were knocked down just like a bomb went off. The water washed buildings off of its foundation. There was 59 fatalities, the fourth Cat 5 to hit the U.S. So, very rare. Okay, storm surge. Okay, so we're pretty close to the coast here. We're not on a barrier island. We're, you know, we got the little bitty intercoastal between us, but we're still in a flood-prone area for storm surge here in Gulfport. So this is just illustrating, let's see, I think there's another, yeah. Okay, so this is just illustrating how different between warnings or different model predictions the predicted storm surge could be. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that's done between all the forecast offices and the National Hurricane Center, the emergency managers, local media, to put this information out for everyone that is living in a storm surge flood prone area. So you can see the pictures on the right there are showing a drastic difference between 8 and 14 to 4 to 20 feet of surge. So this is one of the most important products that we put out, and this is located, you know, on our local NWS Tampa page and the National Hurricane page as well. And the local media is putting this product out as well. We put out a hurricane local statement with all of this information that is passed on to the public so they can understand this. All right, so this is a satellite image of Mexico Beach with Hurricane Michael as it made landfall. 19-foot storm surge reported. You can see the red dots there were houses and buildings that were completely wiped out. Okay, some more images. And as I mentioned, our barrier islands are no different. It's been over 100 years. 1921 was the last time Tampa Bay got hit by the Tampa Bay area. Got a direct hit from a Category 3 or higher hurricane. So that's been a long time. People forget actually what it can do. So we like to show pictures. We don't like to show pictures, but we have to remind the public of the devastation that these storms can actually produce. So you're planning accordingly. Okay, and then flooding from heavy rain is the second leading cause of fatalities in a tropical cyclone. More than half of the tropical cyclone are vehicle related. People driving through flooded roadways. You know, we live in Florida, we get flooded roadways, you know, during the summer almost every day with heavy thunderstorms. So people become accustomed, some people become accustomed to, I can make it through it. Well, in the situation where you're dealing with a hurricane, it may be more significant than you can actually see up under the road. As you can see in these pictures, you don't know how that, you know, the left there, you don't know how fast that water is flowing. It doesn't take very much. 6 inches of water can move your car, you know, and then you're going down the river, or either the road is completely washed out, so you end up crashing your car, as you can see in those pictures. Okay, so this image on the left here, this is the rainfall that we saw with Hurricane Irma as it made landfall. So the central part and the eastern part of the state, some areas saw in excess of 20 inches of rain within 24 hours. I know we're used to rain, but we're not used to that much rain. So, as you can see the pictures there, it turns houses, it floods everything. Again, flooding damage. Okay, now we're going to touch on winds a little bit. I showed a lot of stuff about water because that's the highest threat, as I mentioned. But winds are as well. So this was with Hurricane Laura as it made landfall near Lake Charles, Louisiana, a couple of years ago. I was actually working a midnight shift, so I was kind of looking at storm chasers and what was going on with them. And you can see the 100 to 130 mile per hour winds push over 100 miles inland. That's pretty significant. A lot of times when hurricanes make landfall, they'll drastically decrease in intensity with the interaction of the land. This one had reported winds over 100 miles per hour that far inland. And I remember seeing a storm chaser, he parked his car with a video feed of this in the middle of the night, showing this Capital One building, a skyscraper in Lake Charles, of the windows just getting blown out of it. You can see, over half the windows were blown out of this. And this was 31 miles from the Gulf Coast. So we're sitting about, 10 miles from the coast, maybe? All right, so these twigs, they look like in the picture there, that's actually like 100-foot pine trees that were just completely leveled. 100+ mile per hour winds with Hurricane Michael. Power outages. Okay, so we tell in our planning to have water, have food, have all these supplies. What we put out is you'll hear 5 days, you'll hear 7 days. You can see here some areas in the Panhandle went for over 2 weeks without power. When I was in the Navy, I was stationed in Guam, and we got hit all the time, and we'd go 2 to 3 weeks without power. So we recommend 5 to 7 days, but this is proof here that it could be longer than that. So, and I believe this is with Hurricane Irma, just the percentage of power outages throughout the entire state. Okay, disaster supplies. You can go to weather.gov/Tampa, the website there on the bottom, or hurricanes.gov, or nhc.noaa.gov for the National Hurricane Center. And there's all kind of disaster preparedness planning, anywhere from how to build a kit, how to talk to your insurance, and such. All right, so yeah, there's different disaster kits, insurance. Make sure your pet's information. If you have pets or small children, those are another thing. Important documents, make sure you got all those located in one place. All right, so that's all of my PowerPoint slides. Like I said, me and Mr. Bobby Deskins here, we're kind of tag teaming this. So I'll pass it on to him, and then we'll open it up when we're all done. And hopefully you have some questions, because if you don't, then I don't know. Sometimes it's good that we've answered everything, but I know you guys have some questions, so that's why we're here. So.
The fact that you guys are here is the biggest step, right? And so often when I talk, and when I even talk here, I say, thank you for coming, but be sure to tell your friends and family and neighbors what you learned tonight, because that's how it really spreads. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Bobby Deskins. I'm the Chief Meteorologist at 10 Tampa Bay. I've been there about 14 years, almost 15 years now. And I'm now, actually, I changed my shift a little bit recently. I'm the noon and the 5 to 6 p.m. So you won't see me late at night anymore. I get to come home and see my family, which is like a side effect of COVID. When I got a new contract, I was like, come on, hook me up with something. I go to work at 2 in the afternoon. The kids come home from school at 3. And then I get home at midnight, so I would never see them. And I've got an 11-year-old daughter now that's almost 20. And twin boys, the fraternal twins that are both 9. Well, they're both 9. What are the odds of that? All right, let me get that out of the way. Oh, he's doing it. You got another one there? This one isn't mine. Oh, he's doing something. All right, so what Rodney, we really should have kind of got together because I got a lot of graphics very similar. But he touched on all of the big things that we need to be looking out for. And what we're really talking about here today is preparedness. What you need to do to get ready for this season. We've got models that say we could have something in the Gulf next weekend, Saturday, Sunday. It's 10 days out, don't believe it. I just saw somebody on social media that posted 2 models, the European and the Canadian, and it has something in the Gulf. They didn't post the GFS, which doesn't have anything in the Gulf. But that kind of stuff that far out is really tough. And on TV and even socially for our weather team, I tell our team, it's maybe 7 to 9 days we start talking about it, but anything really even beyond that, 10 days is a long time in the weather world. That storm that's on the map right now for next weekend is a system that's going to form in the Pacific, south of Mexico. Cross over Mexico, fall apart, and then just come out maybe somewhere in the Gulf. We don't know. There's a lot that needs to happen. There's a lot of shear. But the key is because we worry, you don't want to scare people, right? If you cry wolf too many times, nobody's going to take it seriously when we do have a good storm coming. So that's why we try and be more reasonable about that. But the key is, even if you're seeing that, you're like, oh, it's time. It's that time of year that we start getting things prepared and ready to go. So Rodney talked about all the threats, and certainly 90%, as he said, is water. And that goes for here in Gulfport, right? Between the casino and here, there's 3 different levels, A, B, and C. And there have been some changes in those evacuation zones this year. And it's subtle here. But if you go about a block and a half, they went from, say, a C to a B. And you go just to the northeast, almost a block and a half here, it's the same thing, down from a C down to a B. So, and how many, anybody drinking? We got a drinking game with every time I say, as Rodney showed you. The Saffir-Simpson scale is wind, and it's wind only. Now, back in the day, it used to be with pressure. They'd say, kind of now we know if we've got a pressure somewhere in this range, we can estimate that the winds are probably somewhere in this particular range. But they also had storm surge on that list back in the day. And that they took it off, completely separated because it's different. There are different names for them, and you hear us talk about it on TV a lot. Look at this wave, look at this disturbance, look at these thunderstorms. That's all that really is. Then when they start getting to be a depression, a tropical storm, then a hurricane, then they start getting numbers, and they start getting names that are more official. I want to talk about the one at the top, the potential tropical cyclone. And a lot of times on TV, I'll be like PTC1, whatever it is. That is something relatively new that the Hurricane Center had to come up with, because what happens is technically, and this goes with the Weather Service as well too, they cannot issue watches or warning unless there's a system. Right? So it has to be a named system or at least a tropical depression. Then they can say a tropical storm warning, which means within 48 hours. Is it 36 now? Because it went down to 36, I think. It used to be 48. 48 is watch. 36 is a warning, which means within 36 hours, we expect to have tropical storm force winds in this area. We've had systems sitting right out over the Gulf. Right out next to us, nothing. But the models are saying, hey, within 12 to 24 hours, this thing's going to come right at us, and it's going to rapidly intensify right before it gets here, and we can see 50, 60 mile per hour winds. That's tropical storm force. There's nothing out there name-wise right now to issue a warning for. So they came up with potential tropical cyclone. They kind of give it a name, that type of thing. It's a number, and then I think it's a number. I don't think they give it a name yet. It's just a number, right? And then as it strengthens and gets stronger with winds, they can go ahead and give it a name. But that allows them to issue the watches and the warnings. And that's what you are watching for, because that will help to start determine when and if you need to be evacuated from your house. Those are all the tracks for 2021. We had 21 named storms. We have 21 names on the list. So we went right up to the end of the list of names. The year before, we had 30 named storms. That's the record in a season. And as Rodney said, we had to go into the Greek alphabet. So it's alpha, beta, A storm, B storm. What's the C storm? Well, it's not, it's gamma, right? So people are like, oh, the heads are exploding everywhere. So what they did was they came up with one supplemental list they will use that same supplemental list each year if they need to do it. That's that record season. They went 9 into it, right? We had 21 named storms on the list. We went to 30, so it was 9 deep into the Greek alphabet. He had this as well, too. One thing to point out, though, in the last 7 years, we've had a storm develop before June 1st. So the Hurricane Center used to, on June 1st, they would issue a outlook. They'd say, we're watching this area here, it has about 10% chance of developing. This year, they started that May 15th. They started it early, kind of give us a heads up when anything is going to be out there. You see the peaks here. There are different things that we look at in different times of the year. So May, but in June especially, we look at the Gulf and we look at the Western Caribbean. And those are things that can come up and add us. They tend not to be as strong because the water's just getting warmer. But think about it. Look at this peak you see here, July 10th through about October 20th. That water goes from about 84 where it is now to about 92, right? That's off of us, but the whole Atlantic basin starts to warm up. The beginning of the season, we're looking closer to us. By the middle of the season, especially in the latter part, we're looking off of Africa, those big long track storms. Irma came off of Africa. And so things like that. I think it did. There was, what was the one? There's so many storms, I can't remember them all. But it takes about 10 to 11 days for a wave coming off of Africa to form a storm and to get to Florida. So that's something that we generally watch later in the season. There it is, they issued that up. So, showed you that. This is the forecast from Colorado State. The Colorado State says a number, right? 14 is the average number of storms. They said 19. Remember, we had 21 last year. AccuWeather does a little bit of a range, 16 to 20. And then NOAA has it as 14 to 21. They like to do a big, it's going to be dark tonight. And just what Rodney said, it only takes one. I didn't cut a promo today saying that. That's kind of my thing. It's just like, it doesn't matter. Look at this. You see this line right here? That was the A storm in 1992. It didn't happen until August. We had 7 named storms that year. That was it. 12, I think, was the average at that particular time. It was Hurricane Andrew.
Yeah.
So what's it mean? You could be Louisiana and get hit all the time like they do. But it doesn't matter. I mean, if just one of those storms coming over, it's gonna be really, really bad. One of the good things to this is that this changed the building codes in Florida. It changed a lot of things in Florida when it comes to hurricanes. But it helped us get more prepared. So you see like Bolivar, Texas, the pictures, and I had that in here as well too. A lot of the construction here in Pinellas County along the coast is older. You see them sometimes they'll tear stuff down and put new stuff up. The new stuff has the hurricane code. Some of the other stuff doesn't. This is the frequency that we can get a direct hit. So you can see Miami, 6-7 years, every 6-7 years, on average they could. Right? We're about 9 to 10. Irma was 10 years since we had a direct hit. So, these don't always work out, but that's just kind of how it is. Those are the lists. And this looks familiar. Did you have it? That's this list. There are 6 lists. That's the supplemental list. That's the one that they'll use if we get through all 21 names. Now, I said there are 6 lists. They're used one list per year for 6 years, and then it repeats. So now, then you look at last year. You had, I guess I took this out. I was trying to shorten it. Last year, Ida. Ida did all that damage up in the Panhandle. It's gone. They retired Ida. Oh man, I forgot what the name was. It's in my slide, I took it out. But the World Meteorological Organization is a group, and they come up with the new name. So they're going to take off of the 2021 list Ida, threw it out, it's never going to be used again, it's retired, and they put in a new I-storm name. And every 6 years, we'll come back through these lists, unless it gets retired. And it's retired for death, for money, damage, that type of thing. So what we look at for forecasting, we look at temperatures in the water. This fluctuates a little bit. Hurricanes need 80 plus degree water on the surface to keep the engine going, to get those thunderstorms to build. We generally get obviously warmer in here. That's what I was talking about. We watch this area here this time of year because that water's already warm. We've got the loop current, which is a current that comes up and out into the eastern Gulf. I think this has a pointer. There you go. Look at that. So there's a loop current that comes and it comes up here like this, and you can see it. You see that right there? It's coming up like this. It goes down and it actually forms the Gulf Stream as it goes up. It's literally venting all the hot water down here. Mother Nature is amazing. But that also brings a lot of warm water to the Gulf. Hurricanes use about the top 100 feet of water. So early in the season, it starts to get warm at the top. Like right now, it's 80 to 84 degrees in that water. Later in the season, the further you go down, the deeper, the warmer it gets. Because what happens is if a hurricane is sitting here, just kind of spinning around, it's going to blow that warm water, because it's blowing wind, right? It'll take that warm water at the top and actually blow it away, and then water from underneath comes up to fill that void. It's called upwelling. Well, that water is cooler, and so that's less energy for the hurricane. So if it's a stationary storm, it's actually going to weaken a little bit, potentially at least, just because it has cooler water coming up. Later in the season, that water is much colder, or much warmer further down. So even when the top layer gets blown away, you still got warm air, warm water there coming up. So what we look at is basically where the water is warmer than normal. That's one of the ways they do those forecasts when they say, oh, yep, slightly above average. They look at the water temperatures. Where are they at? Are they warmer than average now, or are they cooler than average? Cooler than average, it's going to take a while to warm that up to get some storms to form. Might have a little less coverage, might less storms that year, right? But warmer than average, like we have this year, gives you more fuel for the fire. Then we look at El Nino and La Nina. El Nino is when you have the warming of waters here. That's South America right there. It's tough to see. What we have now is this cold water here. That's La Nina. So this water is cooler than normal. It's been like that for 3 years now. We're going to the third year of La Nina, which is kind of odd. It's usually about a year or maybe a year and a half. That changes our weather patterns. You see this colder water here, it takes the jet stream and puts it further up in the winter. So here in Florida, we tend to be drier and warmer in the wintertime. But it also means in the summertime, during hurricane season, we have less wind shear. And wind shear is what blows storms apart. Right? You can get some storms to form, but they won't get as strong and they get all blown apart when they come there. This is kind of a complicated one, but the blue bars represent the chance that we have La Nina, which you don't want. You want shorter blue bars on this chart, especially August, September, October. And right now, the modelers are saying there's a really good chance we still have La Nina, which means we would have less wind shear, which means we could have more storms. That's the stuff that goes into those forecasts of 14 to 21. And then we start looking at models that tell us where's this high sitting out here, because especially big hurricanes, they float like bobbers around high pressures. So if you had something on average like this, you'd expect the storm to come up and go like that. If something got in here, it would come up and go like that. That all varies to the day that the storm is coming by. But some of these models can look and say this high is going to be further to the east this year, or it's going to be further to the west. Further to the west would actually help protect us a little bit here in Florida and push more things into the western Gulf of Mexico. Like I said, that changes a lot, so that's kind of tough to forecast. Somebody else mentioned Tarpon Springs storm. 1921, there's a church in Tarpon Springs, and I like to tell this story, but I probably shouldn't. When my first month I was here, I went to do some live shot up there, and it was something, it had nothing to do with the weather, but there was a church and they had a plaque in the back, and it said, protected against hurricanes for over 100 years. And this was 2008, 2009, and I was like, and I texted the meteorologist that was working back at the station, I said, isn't it called the 1921 Tarpon Springs hurricane? Because that's where it made a direct landfall. And that was the last Category 3 or higher storm that we had. That's downtown Tampa from that storm.
Oh.
Right? It's all about the water. And when a storm is spinning like this, right? Spinning with high winds, it pushes the water. So if Tarpon Springs is here, and the mouth of Tampa Bay is here, and the storm hits right here, the highest winds right in here are blowing water right into the bay. That's a worst case scenario for Tampa. That would be a worst case scenario for Gulfport. That would be a worst case scenario for everybody here. As he showed you, Irma went up the center of the state, so the wind was actually blowing away. And it blew all the water out. You know, and I told somebody earlier, Saturday morning when I left my house, I didn't come home till Monday morning, we were thinking it might be coming up the West Coast. I don't know if anybody here for Irma? Anybody lived here at the time? It was the largest evacuation in the state. Over 6.5 million people left because at first it was coming up the East Coast, then it was coming up the West Coast. We ran out of gas 5 days before the storm made landfall in Florida. So early, we had time to truck gas back in to fill up the stations because the East Coast people were going out, the West Coast people were going out, people that were waiting, waited, and then everybody kind of went out at one time, and we got it coming up. There's also the 1946 Tampa Bay hurricane. That one wasn't a Cat 3, so it wasn't what we call a major storm of 111 mile per hour winds either. It was a Cat 1, but that was a direct hit as well too. And with something like this, where it hits right there at the bay, the highest onshore winds are right here, right? Right around the eye, and that means Manatee and Sarasota County got the highest winds there. But anything at the bay, or especially just to the north, just really throws water up there. The east side of Pinellas County floods. All Apollo Beach, Ruskin, not necessarily. What's your level there? Are you
146 feet.
Oh, yeah, you're good. Yeah. So storm surge is the major threat, right? And that has to do with the bottom of the ocean. Well, it's the wind of a hurricane, obviously driving that water, right? But the bottom of the ocean determines whether you're going to see a lot of storm surge or little storm surge. At least you have the possibility of it. You go out here 50 miles, maybe 60 to 70 feet, maybe. You go off the east coast of Florida, 6 miles off of Miami, and it's 100 something. The ocean floor drops off. It's a lot easier to push, let's see if I have the picture here, to push water up a shallow. Am I getting too far out of the way? There you go. It's a lot easier to push water up like this than it is to push it up that. That is Tampa. That's the east coast of Florida, the Outer Banks and places like that. That is a huge problem. It's so bad the National Hurricane Center uses Tampa as an example when they do mock drills for hurricanes. So yeah, it's a big issue here. This is again over in Texas. You can see, that was really one of the only ones that were left. All right, run from the water, hide from the wind. This is huge. Our first responders here are selfless, but they cannot be going out when it gets too dangerous once the winds are there. So if you're asked to evacuate, and you know your zone, and you can do that with Jess. Jess will be sitting out there, and when you leave here, go out there. She can put your address in and tell you what zone you're in. All right? A, B, C, or D. They're going to come out. We're going to say on TV, level A is in order to evacuate. Get out. Please do so, because they're telling you that because of water, the chance that's flooding. The storm's 300-400 miles wide. The main wind of that could be at least 200 miles wide. We're all going to get wind, right? Not everybody in Tampa needs to leave. Imagine evacuating everybody in Tampa. 2.5 million people almost. You couldn't do it. You could, but it would cause a lot of problems. We want the people that need to get away from the water to get out. So we want everybody else to hunker down. We want the people that are asked to evacuate to get out. And we want those people to go tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. You don't need to go to Orlando. Hurricane Charlie, anybody remember Hurricane Charlie? It's coming to get Tampa. Took a right turn into Punta Gorda. And everybody that left Tampa went to Orlando. It was sunny in Tampa, and there was a hurricane, remnants of it, over Orlando. Just get out of that evacuation zone. That is the key. So here's the map. And you can see Pinellas County, if it was a really, really big storm, would become 2 islands. You've got this area here, that's downtown. And then you've got what's called the Pinellas Ridge. It goes all the way up, that's Lake Tarpon. Comes all the way back down. Bel Air Bluffs. You can actually see a hill in Florida there. But look at this. I live up in this area here. That's that's Tampa Road. Lineball Avenue going over here like this. You can have 20 feet of water north of the horse track, Tampa Bay Downs. And that's water getting blown right up into here. It's just so shallow. MacDill Air Force Base, Davis Islands. And so these storms, this is the old storm surge zone. That's kind of the new one. Know your zone. Again, Jessica will hook you up with that, get that information. These numbers, it is working for me now. Those numbers are shelters. Know where your shelter is. Not all shelters will take kids, but they're not all going to take pets. So if you are having a pet, and you are going to be evacuating with your pet, you need to do that in advance. If you need help evacuating, these fine gentlemen will help, right? You guys do that. They want you to register now so that they have a list of potentially who needs help and where they're at, because they're planning. That's all they do. They plan for this, right? And they know, hey, we've got 50 people in this area that have got to get out. We may not have to go get all 50 of them, but we got to plan on at least probably half of them. And so they have to manage people and get people to those people that need to be evacuated. So if you can do all of this planning now, it will really help you out later. There's the new. So what happened, what they did was they run what's called a slosh model, I'll show you. And it looks at elevation data over the land. And that's the model. They take the storm included in that slosh model, and they say, okay, storm's moving northeast at 15 miles per hour. It has 100 mile per hour winds. It's going to make landfall in Tarpon Springs. The model predicts how much storm surge it thinks that would create with this particular area in here. And then it says, okay, what's the elevation of this? They just put new data into the elevation of that. So then what happens was it actually changed some of these. So we are, let's see, we are about right here, somewhere right in this area here. And if you look at the changes, there's a little bit more yellow here, and then the red comes up a little bit into this area here too. It's subtle, as I mentioned. But certainly if you live back down towards the casino and off towards the south and the west, it just gets lower and lower. So those are the zones. That would be A, that would be B, that would be C. Most of us, well, just depends on there. That's the forecast model. And all those little squares are the resolution. That's that little particular square is what it's looking at. I think what they did on this, Rod, you may know, is that they have elevation data. They use LiDAR, lasers, to fly over, and they look down at the ground and get that real accurate elevation data. They used higher resolution of that and plugged it into this model. And that's what caused those changes to the maps. There's all the South County. These you can find. I'm sure there's some paperwork. Jess, we have anything like that out there? It's on the website. Smartpinellas.org. Smart Pinellas. Okay. Ready? No, I guess I was talking about the zone. You can get your zone out there. Storm.Pinellas. There you go. All right. How much time we got? We good? What are we looking at here? Oh, by the way, might as well start raising your hand and asking questions too. Rodney's going to help me out if you have questions. Plus, it's not time for everybody to wake up, right? We've put you all to sleep. Yeah.
I have a couple of comments. We did the evacuations for Irma, the 13 and the fire department did, and the medical shelter is the same shelter as the pet shelter, and it was miserable. We took people there, we picked people up, and it was, please find a friend in the Tyrone area if you have a pet. You do not want to go to a pet shelter. Find a friend to help you.
That's the best case in any of this. Shelters are really your last case scenario. You don't want to go there. Sometimes you get, and we had COVID, right? We had 30 named storms that year. I was doing weather from home for 9 months. We had 30 named storms, and imagine if you had to go to a shelter in the middle of COVID, you would get a 6x6 square. I think it was all really you even got. So,
It wasn't a pretty thing. They had snakes, they had cats, they had dogs, no litter boxes. It was scary. So if you have a pet, and I know this is Gulfport, we all have pets, find a friend outside of the area to go and stay with. Excuse me, I heard that overseas high school. It is it is a shelter of last resort. Like if it's a really bad storm, they'll open Bosiega. But they've only done it once, and that was for Irma. So I do know that. Also, I just want to, sorry.
Go ahead.
The city council is welcoming Duke Energy to town because they are going to pay to underground utilities in a lot of the parts of our city. So if you are one of those parts of the city and your utilities get underground, you won't go out of power. And it's really a benefit. So if Florida Power has reached out to you, please really consider doing that, because it's going to help you. It won't help me because it wasn't my part of the city, but it's a good idea. And I just wanted to ask a question about, is there some kind of legislation to stop people? I went through Mexico Beach and everything's rebuilt. Is there some kind of legislation to say once you've been knocked down, we're not going to let you build again?
I don't think so. I don't know, and that would vary state to state as well too. Like I said, the one good thing we have is the building codes. Most of those houses weren't built up to code that we had now. They were grandfathered in at the time. So I want to talk real fast about what to expect when we're starting to do something. So I'm up here saying, hey, the models 10 days out are saying something in the Gulf. Take that for a grain of salt, but a little bit of a heads up, right? This is when the Hurricane Center says, well, this is ironic that I use this one because it's over land, but it's thinking this is going to move out in the northeast and develop. They'll start issuing these outlooks and they give it a percentage chance and a little something like this. That's legit because this is forecast for the next 2 days versus the next 5 days. Look at that. 80% chance that it develops. We start watching it with satellites. We've got visible satellites, which means what it looks like from the sky or from space during the day. And this is infrared, using colors, using the heat, right? Those brighter colors right there, the reds, mean colder cloud tops. So even at night, and we use that during the day too, to tell how tall those thunderstorms are getting. If they're getting taller and taller and wider, storms getting stronger or potentially organizing. So that's something that we're watching. These are all the models. All different types of layers of the model. We've got a whole bunch of different models that we look at. I'm not a fan of social media, but I'm on it. I gotta be on it for work, but I will say Facebooks, and you guys do them with Facebook Lives, it is a great opportunity because I can sit up there and go blah, 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 here's what I think, and then you can comment and ask questions. And people generally tend to ask very, very good questions. And then that, in turn, I can read that and be on Facebook and get your answer out, because if you're asking that question, there's probably somebody else that's asking that question. But let me tell you this. Where were you saying was just north? You said that don't stay here. Tyrone, that's right. So what'll happen is spend 20 minutes explaining, 80 to 90 mile per hour winds from 12 p.m. through about 8 p.m. And that's, Pinellas Park. And then they'll say, well, what about Tyrone? What about Gulfport? It's the same thing, right? If you're a mile apart, the hurricane's 200 to 300 miles wide. So that's the one thing. And I actually had a weather guy tell me, a TV weather guy tell me when I first started, I asked him a question about people and viewers, and he said most people don't know where they are on a map. And I thought he was kind of a jerk for saying it, but he was absolutely right. So it's really imperative to kind of know where you are on a map. The forecast that we show every day, it says, hey, here's where the rain's going to be. Sea breeze starts at the coast, goes that way. If you know where you're on that map, you just wait for green to pop up, and that means you might get rain, right? And that way, because I'm talking from Citrus County to southern Sarasota County to eastern Polk County. He's going even further down south. So we have a lot of people that we're talking to. Gets good enough, close enough, they're going to send the hurricane hunters out. They used to be based out of, it was McDill, right? Now they're over at Lakeland Linder.
Yeah, Lakeland, yeah.
They've got Miss Piggy and Kermit are the names. They're old P3s, they just completely took the wings off, restructured it, got it nice and strong, put a lot of cool radar and stuff like that. Keesler Air Force Base is out of Keesler, Mississippi. Biloxi. Yeah. And they've got the big WC-130s. Those things are cool too. And they just basically go out and they fly in these figure fours. All of that data you see right there, and the drop sondes that they do, these things come out of the bottom right here. It's hard cardboard with a little bit of electronics in it and a parachute. And as it drops, it does pressure, temperature, GPS, which you can show wind, which is going from here to there. That's all live data inside the storm, in different parts of the storm. All of that data goes into the computer models. Imagine we got nothing. We don't have a buoy sitting in the middle of nowhere out over the Gulf. We have some, but we don't have a lot of data. That's just sitting on top of the water. When the models are trying to say, which way is this thing going to go, we need to tell it what it is, what that thing is. And so we put that data out there, and we actually know now. And then that data goes into the initialization of the model, and that gives you better models. And then that gives you spaghetti. No meatballs, just spaghetti.
So one thing to add with the drop zones that the Hurricane Center drops out, also the weather stations, including ours, launches weather balloons. So normally we launch them twice a day, but during hurricane operations, if it's going to be affecting anywhere from the central U.S. all the way to the East Coast, we'll do special launches for weather balloons. So the drop zones come down from the aircraft and measure. Our weather balloons go up through the atmosphere to measure to help the forecast.
And you'll do that for severe weather instances too. They normally do it once in the morning, once at night. 7 in the morning, 7 at night, 8 in the morning, 8 at 7 in the morning.
7 and 7.
And all that data that's recorded with the weather balloons goes into the models as well too. Each one of these lines is one model. See how it's color coded right there? So we could go on TV and show you all these models, and you'll see this squiggly one over here. You're like, oh, that's it. It's coming right at us. We're going to get it. So when we show it to you, we usually talk like, all right, don't freak out too much. Ignore this one, that type of thing. So then we get into all the products, and there's a bunch of products from the Hurricane Center. There's a bunch of products that actually come from the National Weather Service with Rodney as well too, out of Ruskin. The Hurricane Center does most of this. The cone, storm surge is you guys, right? Well, they run the slosh.
Yeah.
You do the watches and warnings for surge.
Yeah, they give us the base data, and then we pull it into our localized stuff, yes, and put it in plain language so the public can understand it into hurricane local statements and such.
So real quick on the cone, it has nothing to do with where the weather is. The cone only is where we think the center of the storm is going to be. See that spot right there? That's where they think it's going to be. It's a particular that long. And you go out 12 more hours, another 12 hours. And what they do is they actually use these circles. So they go back and they look at the last 5 years. And let's just use day 3, right? They draw a cone, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. Let's use day 3. They go out and they said, all right, Irma. On day 3, we said Irma was going to be here. It turned out to be 115 miles to the east of there, right? And they look at every storm that they did. And then they average the error that they were off. And then they take 2/3 of that, and they multiply, no, just kidding, but they come up with this radius. And then what that means is, so what they'll come back and they'll say, oh, I don't have it, but they'll say, we think it's going to be here. We used to be off by about 110 miles, which is 220, right? They give you a radius. But now we got a little bit better for that day 3 forecast. So now, day 3 is about 100 miles off versus 110. So now the circle starts here, but it would only go out to about here. So on day 3, when they put where they think that center is going to be, then they put a circle around it. That's what gives you those outside edges. Nothing to do with the weather. So the center of this storm could be here or it could be here, which means there's weather on this side of it, right? Imagine if the center could be here or it could be out here. That's a big difference for Florida than it is for the other. So remember that when you're looking at those, they have nothing to do with the actual winds. Yeah?
Bobby, could you talk about the rotation of storms, the counterclockwise, and if we're on the right side or the left side, how that affects storms?
Yeah, so Irma went up the state, and the winds were blowing out of the northeast for us. We had a lot of winds. You got to Lakeland, there was a lot of damage out there. That's where the center went around, had a lot of twisting as well, plus tornadoes out there. But storm surge, which is our major concern, the winds were blowing from the northeast to the southwest, so they were blowing that way, which blew all that water there out of the bay. So people were walking on the bay in Rodney's pictures. There were manatees that were just stuck there on the bay till the water came up. But you see that water being pushed out? That's the power of the wind. It works exactly the opposite way when the wind's blowing the other way. It can push all that water into your house, into all these places. I mean, it could get ugly. This is one of the best graphics I think they've come out with forever. This is partly to do with the cone, but it's the reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. It goes for hurricanes as well too. The color shading is the highest probability of seeing tropical storm force winds, right? So you can see Florida's right here. It looks like the best chance for tropical storm force winds is going to stay offshore with this storm. But when? Right here, so there's Keys, right? So Wednesday at 8 p.m., there's about a 10-20% chance that South Florida sees tropical storm force winds. Wednesday at 8 p.m. You need to get ready during the day. Things around the house, things you're doing. You don't want to be doing it at night. If you expect those winds to start early in the morning, you need to be done by sunset the night before. Get your generator out, get all that stuff figured out. Have those panels up on the windows, right? And put boards up, something like that. Get it all done during the day, and then be ready to go well ahead of time. This really helps you schedule. I mean, I use this just for, I do a lot of planning with the TV station. Every 6 hours we have a briefing, and I say, okay, here's what we're looking at. The TV station is in a Category 1 evacuation zone. The building can take about 9 foot of surge, but that's about it. And we end up leaving and going to WMOR, which is out by the casino.
I was just going to add with this. This can look very confusing to the public to understand a lot of this, especially with all the bright colors and everything. So we take this data and look at the times, and we do at least 2 briefings a day when we're going to be impacted. And we're in constant communication with the emergency managers of all the counties that we work with to put out the information to the public. So a lot of if you're in an evacuation zone and you've heard that you need to evacuate, that's been coordinated from the Hurricane Center to our office, to the emergency managers, and to the media as well.
With the timing, with the levels of evacuation, because the storm surge is calculated there. And then something that's kind of it's a little bit unpredictable is so Pinellas County would have to get rid of, say they have to evacuate A, B, and C. That's a large number of people now, right? You can't do that in 48 hours. So when Irma came, it kind of surprised me because they started 72 hours out. I was like, wow, they already started evacuation. We don't have a warning in effect. It used to be tied to the warnings, but it's not. It's tied to how many people we need to get out and how far out in advance that storm's coming. So they erred on the side of getting out ahead of it, which is a really smart thing to do. So keep that in mind too. If you're asked to evacuate, there's a lot of calculations that are going in here. If it's level A, they can do it in 48 hours, right? But if it's A and B, they're going to need a little bit more time. Then the cones come out, hurricane watches and warnings. Of course, you can see that. This is a great example. I mean, the center could be right here as a hurricane. That's almost worst case scenario for us. Almost. It's very close. It may still go off to the northwest there, but it's close enough that we could actually end up having a whole bunch of storm surge and higher wind. And then I kind of got into almost the same graphics you had. I do want to say this. When you're getting ready, have a plan. You guys are here. You're more than halfway there because now you kind of have a heads up, right? Know where you're going to go. Know where you would evacuate to. My family, luckily I have friends that they can go to because I'm going to be at work, right? Is there a hotel that you may need to stay at? Would you like to stay at? Local, right? That's out of the evacuation zones. Figure that stuff out now. Write it down. Have a plan so that when things are coming and they can get kind of quick, they can creep up on you like, well, just yesterday they said they weren't sure. Now today they're saying it's going to be a Cat 4 and it's coming tomorrow, right? Go to your plan. You don't need to worry as much because you have that plan and you just start putting it right into motion. We talked about the pets, right? You need to do that plan now. You need to know who takes pets. Have a friend as well who will do that. Food. Obviously non-perishable food. Something that you can cook on a grill because you'll probably be cooking on a grill if it's bad enough because you won't have power. Charge up your batteries, your phones, all your iPad, you got kids, all that good stuff. Charge all that stuff up. Remember, you can use your car later to do that, but you burn a little bit of gas if you start your car to do that, and you don't want to do it obviously in the garage. Cash is king in the back end, even if you can get gas, because gas pumps run on electricity, right? But they're not taking credit cards at that time. Medicine, 2 weeks worth. You need 2 weeks worth, and that sometimes you need to plan ahead to have that. Right? Plan ahead now. It's June 1st almost. We should have 2 weeks ahead right now. Because just in case. Don't forget medicine for your pets as well too. Some pets have that. Insurance. He started talking about insurance as well too. There's a difference between water that falls into your house on your insurance policy, like rain, a hole in the roof, a tree falls, a hole in the roof, and floods your house, versus water that comes up into your house, storm surge. There's a difference in your policy. Check that. Take the policy. Take your birth certificates. Take your social security cards. You should have a box somewhere in the house, preferably fireproof, but it doesn't have to be, but that has all of that stuff in it. You just grab that thing and you go, right? Whenever you need it, I need to get my birth certificate or something, you just go to the box and you grab it. But if you have it with a handle on it, you take it, You know exactly what's in it. You take it, and it's really ready to go. Insurance for your vehicles as well too. Obviously, keep that in mind. Get those out of harm's way if you can. Generators, it's just a huge thing. I mean, you guys know the carbon monoxide issue with generators. People go out and they buy these brand new generators, and they're standing in line, because here comes the storm. They're buying wood and they're buying generators, and then they don't know how to work it, right? And then they use it in the garage, or they'll use it right outside. We're using it outside. We'll use it right next to a window. You got the window open because it's hot and it's humid because power's out, right? That carbon monoxide is a silent killer. You just get tired. That's it. You don't know. So know how to use that generator. Get one if you're going to get one. Get it now. Know how to use it. Have gas for it, ready to go now, right? Check on your neighbors. If you hear a generator going after a storm, check on them. Make sure it's being used properly, just so that they don't have an issue with that as well too. If you're going to leave, obviously lock your doors. I lived on a barrier island in North Carolina for like 10 years. And we had certain stickers that let us get back on the beach after hurricanes. We got hit all the time. People would be like, I'm not leaving because I can't get back over. They won't let us over. Well, they're not going to let you back into those areas until it's safe, until all the down power lines are out of the way. They can't have people driving back down here. These guys will be out here taking care of that stuff. Obviously, power company, but they'll be helping organize all that. Once it's safe, then they let people back on. It's no hurry, right? They're out here patrolling and doing things while you're not here, so it keeps it safe. When people start coming back in, then you're allowed back in, then you can kind of take care of it. Check on your neighbors, I said that. Cars, that. Oh, yeah, another good thing for insurance, take your phone and video and just walk around the house. You can lie about it, you can say it's a Monet, but it doesn't matter. Just say this is what it is, this is a TV, I got it from here, I got it from that. Because if something drastic really happens to your house, you're going to need proof that you had these items in there. And this is couches and TVs and your kitchen and that kind of stuff. What was the insurance value? You tend to walk around and do that. It's a good idea to do that every now and then, like once a year at least, just in case something happens. All of the stuff that we talk about, safety precautions, and a lot of it has to do with the power going out. The power can go out in the middle of a thunderstorm, right? It's not just hurricanes. Hurricanes just give you a better chance of all this stuff lasting for a long time. All right, everybody, it's time to wake back up. Got any questions?
I have a question about that screen that came on at the beginning that was saying text for Gulfport alerts, and I'm wondering how that relates to the Pinellas, alert Pinellas that we, many of us already have.
It's on yours, actually.
That's what?
I think that was on your thing. You had all the alerts that come to phones automatically. And
I can take that one, Bobby.
Okay.
Yeah,
So at the beginning, we had slides showing as people came in, and on the local level, we have an electronic newsletter where we send city information. Every Monday, we send upcoming events and city information. During storms, that network is the same network that we send official local information, like where the sandbag distribution location's at, if there's a city facility closure, and there's the ability to text. If you have a smartphone, you have the texting ability to text MYGULFPORT to 22828 and then register for that network. Once you're on that network, you'll receive the local city information during storms and also every week with upcoming events.
invaluable data. It's just invaluable to have because it's really localized. Back in the back, we got right here in the front.
Okay, can you comment on, can you make comments on, if you have to evacuate, you have an RV or a hard camping type trailer, the feasibility of doing that?
Taking it with you?
Taking it and staying in that somewhere at higher ground?
No, most of the times not because of the wind. So even in a category 1, we don't want you in a mobile home, right? And that's a mobile home on bricks or in a mobile home park. Anything that you're driving, that you're pulling, is going to be weaker than that. Am I right?
Right, and not just the category of the storm, tornadoes as well.
Yeah.
So you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable, I would say, building on wheels.
You may even look like, hey, we're thinking about taking the trailer to Rainbow Springs or whatever this weekend when we camp out. Oh, looks like it's going to be bad weather. No, we ain't going to go. You definitely don't want to do that in America. It is definitely going to be bad weather then.
were talking about only some areas of Gulfport were being, the power lines were being put underground. Can we get an idea of where and why not all of Gulfport? I happen to be in where it is, but I'd like to know where it isn't.
I can get that on the website, I think.
Does it have to do with the evacuation zones?
No, it has to do with, there's a center above Central Avenue and 52nd where, there's an electric plant there. If you're one of the people coming off of that plant, then you will be underground.
Oh.
But, I obviously am not on that plant, so I don't know which plant I'm on. And maybe that will come in the future, but that's how you know if you're the one getting underground, is because you're coming off of that station.
Oh, good. I'm in the right place at the right time for a change.
Yes.
Time to buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah, I got a question for you. You mentioned about the warm water layer.
Yeah.
Like, have you kept records of the Gulf temperatures, like over the past 20 years? Is there any, is that period where the danger is it lengthening more? Do you think it's going to be like pushed up into May? And
100%. Yeah, we know that the water's getting warmer. It just averages. I mean, this is climate change.
Right.
Some people, it's kind of, I know it's a touchy subject, especially for us on TV. I'm not trying to make anybody mad. I can't stand the news. I like the weather, but the news is like, oh man. So I'm not trying to polarize people, but we're measuring climate change. You can argue all different kinds of things, solutions, why it's happening, but it's definitely happening. And the water's getting warmer, and because of that, you actually could have a longer season. I mean, look, now we moved those outlooks back to May 15th instead of June 1st just because of that. Plus, you can make an argument, a warmer atmosphere with warmer water, you have less temperature difference from the surface all the way up. So you might actually have fewer hurricanes because they're not growing thunderstorms as much up into the colder air. Could be, it's just kind of a theory. But with the warmer water, remember the water is the fuel. So the warmer water, and we see it all the time, it's doing pretty good, and we say, oh man, when it gets up here to that loop current, it's probably going to explode and get real strong. And we see it happen all the time. So that's because of the water. So when you have warmer water, you have more fuel for the fire. And then sea level rise, I tried to look it up. I think in St. Pete, is it 8 inches in the last 100 years? It's some crazy number I wouldn't have thought about, but it's coming up.
And do you think the peak will be a wider or taller? Or what do you think that peak is going to look like? In September?
Oh yeah. It would be wider, 100%. Because the peak is with the water warming up all over the Atlantic Basin, which starts in the west and kind of works its way east. And there's also monsoons over Africa that's generating more thunderstorms later in the season, and so we look further over there as well too. But yeah, you're right. It would just get a little bit wider.
Yeah.
Wow. One more.
With the European and the American model for the spaghetti models, they often seem to be the most accurate, but a lot of times the European is the most accurate, and I'm just curious why.
No, I'm going to throw that at you, Monty.
I'll try to answer this as simple as I
The
possibly
hydrologic equation is fabulous.
Yeah. So forecast models have a lot of different factors that impact the end result. A lot of that is data that's input into the model, whether that be surface observations, satellite data, radar data. So that goes into it, and then you got the equations that calculate certain things and the resolutions of certain models. So it's sampling different levels vertically, and it's sampling levels horizontally as well. So all of those models, whether it be the Euro, the GFS, the Canadian, the North American model, they all have their different resolutions, both vertically and horizontally, and they both have different inputs. Like I mentioned, the satellite data, the radar data, surface observations, ship observations out over the water, those are important as well. So there's several different factors. So.
And the European, and it comes down to computing power,
Yes.
right? They could use the same computer, but the output, the products that the models make, the GFS comes out with all this high resolution temperature data for that, forecast for this, forecast for that. The European doesn't come out with as much data on the back end. So it can use more computer power figuring out the bigger picture, right? And sometimes that's why it can be a little bit more accurate, right? The GFS, they just upgraded computers last year, I think,
Yes.
within about a year or so, so it should be getting a little bit better. But you know, on TV, we'll show what's called now ensembles. Like if I show you those spaghetti lines, one line for the GFS and one line for the European, right? That's the main run of the model. But instead, I'm gonna say, let me just show you what the GFS is thinking in multiple runs. They run it 21 times, 20 times, and 21 is the one that they show you, right? It's the main one. So then there'll be 20 different lines from the GFS alone. And that's to kind of give you an idea that, like, look, don't follow one line, because this one line's one model. And that particular model, one model run thinks it's out here, the other one thinks it's over here. Now, sometimes I'll go on TV and they're all thinking it's right in the same spot, and that's okay too, right? That says we got pretty high confidence in the model that it thinks it's going to go there. And when we see the European model agree with that, then we start going, okay, this is more high confidence in the forecast. There's a lot to it. Just in the last 5 to 10 years alone, with social media, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I say polar vortex. It's nothing new. We've had polar vortex, I guess, forever, right? Bomb cyclone, right? Bomb cyclone is just a low pressure that deepens 24 hours and or 24 millibars in 24 hours or more. 24 millibars or more in 24 hours. But like, you know, it's great on TV. Bomb cyclone
Is it a bomb or explosive? It's both.
It's both. Yeah, and it's tough because especially on TV, you know, I have like, my thing when I go do my briefings at the station, because when Irma came, we had people crying and people scared, like in the newsroom. And so I'd start with a big screen like this and I'd be like, all right, here's the deal. We're all gonna die. But it's not going to be from this, all right? So everybody relax. It could get uncomfortable. It's gonna be a long week or two after that, but we're all gonna be okay, so just relax and we go into our plan, go into our mode.
In your tenure working storms, what was the most interesting storm you've seen?
I gotta say, you know, it was before I was working storms, really. When I lived in Wrights Beach, North Carolina, one year we had Bertha and we had Fran. And Bertha came through, B-storm, right, pretty early, and it put a little water on the beach, and it was bad, it was pretty bad. Fran just tore the place up. And that goes to the point, like, don't get lackadaisical about it. Like, oh, we had Bertha, we're fine, I'm staying this time. And that's exactly what friends of mine did. You know, and then most of them got out, but there was some guy, I didn't know him, but he got on the news for calling 911 in the middle of the storm. He's out on an 8-mile-long barrier island, and they ain't coming to get him. You know, and it's like a scary 911 call that gets cut off because the little phone line died. This was a little bit ago. No, not cell phones like that. That's how old I am.
All right, so mine was, let's see, in the U.S., I'll say Hurricane Irene, I think it was, that went up the coast of North Carolina and Virginia. I think it was Irene. It was an ice storm. I was in the Navy at the time, and we were hunkered down for 3 days at work. But the strongest one, the most, I guess, scared I would have been, was when I was in the Navy in Guam. Typhoon. Typhoon Alley. So it's located about 13 degrees north. So we get hit by 10 or more tropical storms or higher every year. And I was stationed there for 2 years, and we get excited with bad weather. You know, it's why we became meteorologists, right? So every year we'd be like, all right, I want to get hit by a big one. So Super Typhoon Paka came. Winds were over 200 miles per hour. It completely leveled the island. And after that, I've never said that I want to live. I never want to go through another hurricane, period. And I've been a meteorologist for 29 years. I love weather. It's my passion. But I can tell you, you don't want to go through something like that. It's not fun.
Own property, have a family, get a little bit older, you're just like, no, it's not fun anymore. Yeah. It's not fun that way. By the way, they name them different basins of the ocean. So it's Western Pacific is typhoons.
Yes.
Eastern Pacific, Hawaii and eastward is like 145 or something is hurricanes. Atlantic is hurricanes. Indian Ocean is
It's just cyclones.
cyclones. That's
Yeah.
right.
Just cyclones.
That's another thing. Mid-latitude cyclone, cyclogenesis.
Yeah.
All these things you hear people say on TV now is just all normal stuff to meteorologists, but they kind of blow it up a little bit.
Down in Australia, they'll call them willy willies
Willy willies.
with an Australian accent, of course.
So any other questions? Anybody who's got a hurricane kit ready to go? 1 gallon of water per person per day. I have 5 people in my family. That's 35 gallons of water that I need for a week. I don't have 35 gallons of water. But here's a tip. When everybody's getting ready for the storm, they're out there mobbing, we get off the conference call with the milk and bread people. Then we go on TV and we say, here comes the storm. So the milk and bread sells. We now include the water people. I'm joking. I guess I saw that. Took me seriously there for a second. But I see a lot of people going out buying all this water, like ahead of the storm, buying cases of water. Your faucet still works, right? Save some cartons, save some empty milk jugs, and rinse them out as you go through the next couple of weeks, next couple of months. And then when the storm comes, fill them up out of your faucet. You don't need to go fight all these people to get water, right?
Pay for it.
Yeah, you don't have to pay for it, exactly right. So keep those things in mind. All right, class dismissed.
So thanks again to Robbie and Bobby for being here. What a great presentation they gave us here tonight. We appreciate it, guys. You're welcome. Before I get out of here, I want to thank everybody again for coming out, Gulfport Council, as well as people watching at home. Like they stated multiple times, now's the time to prepare, not when the storm is first coming. We're going to have Pinellas County emergency outside, so if anybody wants to find out what zone they are, find out information about signing up for special needs and things like that. I do want to also say, working the past few storms that we worked in the area, I'm one of the ones in charge of special needs and evacuations. If you're signed up for special needs and evacuation, it's great. But when we call, it's a good thing to, if you're on the list, you should be getting out when we're calling you. A lot of times we'll have people signed up and they'll say, hey, we'll wait till it gets a little worse before we evacuate. That's not the time to do it. We have a certain window where we want to get everybody safe and out of the area to the safest place they could be. So I'll leave it on that note, and thanks again for everybody that came out. We really appreciate it.